When you first came to the city, Andrew, you're from Toronto. The big thing was Hamilton is this hidden gem, right? We can't make as much money in Toronto flipping a house, buying a house, holding it for 5 years like we see in Hamilton. Like that's why you guys came here.
For speaking frankly, I think you can make money flipping houses in Toronto just the same. The only difference is that the versatility of having to hold a property here is much more feasible than having to hold a property there. In Toronto, your overheads are crazy, right? In Toronto, you can't cash flow properties because properties are so expensive.
Yeah.
But in Hamilton, you can cash flow properties. Just like in St. Catharines, you can. In Windsor, you definitely can.
Yeah.
Go to Sault Ste. Marie, you're cash flowing all day, right? But appreciation is not as...
Being from Hamilton, that's how I think Hamilton grew to a certain point where it is today, where James Street's popping, Auto Street's popping. It's a good city to live in. Definitely different from 10 years ago. But where does the city go from here? Because again, what you just said that, you can make money in Toronto flipping houses. It was just, I wouldn't say easier, more feasible in Hamilton.
You have more options and it's less likely to drown you out. It's a smaller pond, right? And when you operate in a smaller pond, you can be a bigger fish quite easily and you can compete.
Where do you think Hamilton's going now? Like from Toronto, you're a transplant Hamiltonian. Where do we see Hamilton going?
If I'm an optimist, I see this place blowing up in a positive way just because there's not a lot of options. You see, I think of Hamilton sometimes with respect to city as the last guy on the dance floor that the girls have a chance to dance with. He might not be the best looking, but he's the only one there.
And we're the girls, right? We're the ones dancing with the guys.
We're the girls dancing with the guys there, right? So it's the last one
Good
there
analogy,
at the end of the night, and people are kind of out of options. They're looking at this guy and they're just like, yeah, okay. I mean, it's not the best way you'd want to get picked, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make do.
You're not bragging
about it,
you're
no,
not
but you'll make do. But that's kind of the thing, right? Toronto's getting bigger. The immigration is through the roof. A lot of people coming into Ontario. Where are they going to go? People like to pick other places, and what do they say are the armpits of Ontario? Oshawa, Hamilton, right? Yeah. And while there are, a lot of negative things that people can talk about, I still am an advocate of the fact that Hamilton's an actual city. Oshawa, not as much. Right? Like the thing is that Hamilton has all the right infrastructure. Hamilton can definitely outperform Oshawa by a long shot. The thing is that it just always feels like the leaders of this city are just really not too interested in seeing it prosper.
Yeah.
Right? It seems like the only people that are able to stay in power and make decisions for the city are people who don't encourage business, right? It's like they want to make sure that the city is almost catering to not necessarily a working population. Like it's weird because Hamilton's called the Steel City, right? It was Hammertown, a place where people, work, right? Doesn't really feel like it when you drive around, right?
Yeah, and I hear the armpit of Ontario all the time about Hamilton and Oshawa. And I think the politicians that run the city really hate that term. Because they are doing everything possible to make it at least not feel like it's an armpit city, right? We're talking about how our infrastructure is going, all the condos we're seeing, right? The transit we're getting, and definitely the property tax that I am now paying. And this is fairly recent, the property tax increases.
Yeah, they do a lot of talking about stuff, and they're great at talking. But I mean, let's see how long it actually takes them to do. How long do you think it's going to take them to build the LRT that they're building?
Yeah, definitely 5 years. Yeah, 5 years.
Dude,
yeah,
that's crazy, man. They've been building, and it's not just Hamilton. Toronto's been building some lines for like a decade. Right, and things haven't really materialized, and every time there's a problem, they have to do studies, and it's just delays after delays, back and forth.
Yeah, and then we always go back to the point that is it actually worth building something like that?
Because when it goes over budget, then they're just like, oh, maybe it's not worth it to do. And it feels like that sometimes with the city. We go halfway in, and then they're just like, no, it's too hard. Let's turn back, and they turn back. They already spent half the money,
everything, cleaning up.
Exactly, and now it's done, and like, man. It feels unfortunate.
And I say here, just thinking about all the recent stuff that the city's done, the biggest thing was the stadium. When we built that new stadium, we tore down Iverwin, which was an old stadium, which should have been torn down. Build a new stadium on the same site of Iverwin. We just turned it.
Flipped it,
yeah. Yeah, literally flipped it. And went super over budget. There was major delays. The contractor's not accountable. The city's not holding the contractor accountable. And before we even took possession of the stadium, there are speakers falling. That are 50 feet up in the air, big speakers that are just falling out of the sky.
That actually happened.
That actually happened. That would kill somebody if, Tech was going on. Can we trust the city to actually build this type of public infrastructure? Because that's what it is. It's public money, right? But the problem is that council and the mayor is the only person that gets to make these decisions, right? Because even if the whole city said no to LRT and, all council and the mayor really wanted the train would get built. That's where we're at in the city, that I see a lot of people making decisions. And I don't want to say that our transplants of Toronto that are coming in, making the decision. We talked before in a podcast that all the people in Ancaster and the encampments, and these people were, helping move the encampments, but they live up in Ancaster, and there's no way that the encampments were going up in Ancaster. So just seeing how the city's evolving, is it going to be a good place, not only to invest in, because that's what we're talking about today and what we're always talking about, real estate, but to raise a family in, which is crazy because I had a great childhood living in Hamilton.
Yeah, you're also a certain type of person. I would describe you as not a soft person.
Well, I like to think that I have that side, but
No, but I mean, you're a deal with it kind of guy. People who are protective and defensive maybe don't want to contend with this. Like, I feel okay with certain things, but I know that I know people in my life that would not be okay contending with certain things. Some people are not okay with any form of challenge in their neighborhood, and it's not wrong. But the thing is that the city allows a lot of things to happen. And this is where you hear it all the time, like rich neighborhoods don't get these kind of things, right? Some people in rich neighborhoods, they don't even tolerate the garbage bins being put back onto the property on the ground. No. They have to be placed nicely.
Yes.
But in lower class areas, they just throw them, right?
Yes.
And there's obviously a difference in the way that people will manage, or the city will treat wealthier areas versus less wealthy areas, poor areas, right? And Hamilton on the spectrum is not as wealthy as Toronto or the GTA in general, or Oakville or Burlington, and that's why it's affordable to go to. But it's not up to, but thereby that means that it's not up to the people who are running the city to make the changes. It's up to the people who decide that they want to take an opportunity in Hamilton and improve things. And this is where communities come in.
Yes, and going out and voting is another big issue, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a high voter turnout, so we get stuck, with, the people that do go out and vote.
Exactly, right? So therein lays the thing. Like, okay, you pointed out that how is my perspective as somebody who moved from Toronto to Hamilton, and how do I view things? The thing is that I like Hamilton because I can seize opportunity. Mm-hmm. I can do things here. So if you're listening to this and you're looking and you've considered Hamilton in some fashion or form, be it for investment or even as a place to go and live, if you are somebody who can create waves, and it might be challenging to do in Toronto, where if you're making small waves in Toronto, you can come to Hamilton and make big waves. Little pond, big fish analogy that sometimes we talk about is that when I was living in Toronto, I felt like a small fish. And then I came to Hamilton and I became a big fish. I could, the standards were different that I was operating in, and I brought those standards to Hamilton, and I was able to compete. And now I grew bigger, and I can go back to Toronto and compete more aggressively. Whereas some of the other people that I was on par with, they're still in Toronto, and they're still small fish. What do you want to do? Depends what opportunity you're looking at, right? Here's what I see happening. So, like, if you look at areas like James Street, so in Toronto, there's an area called Liberty Village. Liberty Village was a ghetto not that long ago. But what happened was, because it was such a grimy area, all the artists could afford to live there, move in there, open up studios and do whatever. And guess what happened to the neighborhood? They made it nice, right? They made it nice. They made it shishi. Bars opened up, clubs opened up, trendy lofts got sold there. And then the area got so expensive, all the artists had to move out.
Dude, it's just the North End. That's the North End.
That's what I mean.
North End, exactly the same.
So what happened on James Street? You started to see all these artists coming in. They started buying buildings and started to promote their art exhibits.
Yes,
and
the city saw potential of the waterfront, which when I grew up, there was nothing there. There's one park there. That was it. There was Eastwood Arena, which was definitely not a nice arena. And then, but, everybody saw potential, and then the city saw potential. Right, that's how it kind of worked.
Yeah,
and then the city reinvests all this money into the waterfront, and now the North End is like, I'm not buying a home in the North End. Neither do I. I don't really want to live in the North End because it's not my type of crowd. Yeah, because that's what happens with that. That's how you know what's like. That's what happens to the areas. Like the whole crowd shifts.
Let's talk about that because you mentioned you wouldn't want to live in the North End. Now I live in the North End. Another word that I use when I describe the North End is actually I call it the Bayfront because it is the Bayfront. Yeah. Right, and it's kind of like the Hamiltonians call it the North End. Yeah. Right. People who move in there from anywhere else call it the Bayfront.
Yeah.
Right, because we're not gangsters, coming in saying North Side, North Side for life, North Side proud, North Side strong, right? It's different.
It's just the North End.
It's just the North End. Yeah, I know because
put the hands down.
Exactly. No, when I was in Toronto growing up, when people would be like, "Oh, yeah, where'd you live?" I used to say West Side. Yeah, that was cool, right? That's the West Side. Okay. West Side, and if somebody said, "Oh, they're from the East End," it's almost like, "Oh, we're gonna fight," right?
I see.
Right? It's not the case. But when you say that's not your crowd, do you mean like the old Hamiltonian North End crowd, or the new people that are moving in there now?
I wouldn't say the people, right? I would say the restaurants and what's happening in the North End.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah. If it's a Friday night, Saturday night, I'm not going out to eat in the North End. Like I'm just not. Right, it's just not my cup of tea. So, and that's because the places are a little bit more fancy, even though I don't think it's that fancy.
I mean, they're not that fancy. No,
I don't think they're that fancy. But everybody that goes there thinks they're fancy, and this is the best restaurant in Hamilton, and parking sucks down there. It's not my type of place. But you go down to Friday, Saturday night, even in the summer on weeknights, James Street's packed, which is great for the city. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's just that area turned into its own little area.
Yeah.
Same with the East End. Auto Street was never like that when I was a kid. And now Auto Street's like, that's where you want to go and eat. That's where you want to go walk.
I should take some tips from you whenever I need to show my friends around and decide where it is to go, because I don't actually explore the Hamilton food crowd. I'm not a foodie. That's the truth, right? I don't care that much about it. I'm more of a cook at home kind of guy.
But then you want to go to like a store to get your ingredients, and you want to go walk up Auto Street. You want to go to the market, and in the back, it's in a city parking lot behind Auto Street is the farmers market on Saturdays.
That's cool. I didn't know that. But see, this is why when I need to go somewhere, I message you. I'm just like, hey, what should I do with respect to this? Like actually, you could do like some tour TikToks and say these are the places to go in Hamilton.
This is where you should go get a sandwich.
Yeah.
I will hook you up where you should get the sandwich.
When we're comparing, let's say, Toronto to Hamilton, this is the thing that I mean where Hamilton has a lot of these cool things. Hamilton, for example, a place that I go to is called Bonanza.
We love Bonanza.
It's near James, again, technically right by the north end, at the border of it anyway. And it looks like it's a house.
Yeah, sure it's a house.
Yeah, Bonanza looks like a house. And anytime I bring people there, they're just like, is this legal? And I'm just like, it's like a speakeasy sandwich spot, right? Yeah. And up to about a year ago, you could go there, you get a sandwich, like a hefty sandwich for like $6. Now it's like maybe $8 or $9. It's still way cheaper than going to Subway, and it is badass. It's so much better than anything else. So yeah, honestly, anybody listening, if you want to go get like amazing sandwiches, go there to Bonanza. You're going to get a hefty freaking sandwich.
We are not sponsored by Bonanza. However, Bonanza, if you're looking to sponsor anybody, us too, we'll take it.
There you go. No. What other place?
But Toronto, let me ask you this question because I'm interested. When we talk about Auto Street, you live in the North End, right? Mm-hmm. So you live on the other side of the city.
Yeah.
I live on the other side of the city.
Yep.
And you say, when friends come down, I'm going to take you to the East End. If I were to come visit you in Toronto and you wanted to show me around town, would you take me to the other side of the city?
Only for Greek Town. So like, okay, so we have a place in Toronto. It's at Keele and Bloor-ish. Okay. That's technically, in my opinion, the nicest in-city neighborhood you can live in. Maybe I'm biased because I grew up there, but it's because it's right by Hyde Park. So Keele and Bloor, Hyde Park and Bloor, Runnymede and Bloor. Runnymede and Bloor has Bloor West Village. That area over there is kind of like Locke Street in Hamilton.
I see.
And then Hyde Park, in my opinion, is closer to freaking Central Park in New York. It's the only park that is that size. It has a free zoo in it, right? And like you can go there. Yeah, you can go there. I went to Humberside Collegiate, and whenever, as high school kids, we'd want to go drinking, we would go to the park. My mom used to say, oh, you shouldn't go to the park at night. There's dangerous people. I'm like, we are the dangerous people, as if though we were like thugs or something, because that was cool at the time. But no, like we'd go through there and like... And they have tennis courts. It's a white area when they have tennis courts. They still have this place called Grenadier, and it's a breakfast place. They used to have a breakfast meal at 7 a.m. I don't know if they still do, but you could go there for like $5, get 2 eggs, bacon, and a coffee.
Where? In the park?
In the park. That's what I'm saying. In the park. That thing was amazing. And I would compare Hyde Park in terms of since we're in a smaller city to like Gage Park.
Yeah,
it's way bigger than Gage Park.
What?
It's bigger than Gage Park. I'll take you sometime.
Yeah.
I used to take girls on dates there all the time. That was so easy because I live nearby. I would take girls on dates to Hyde Park. And just take them through the zoo. I'll take them through the flower garden.
What kind of animals they got in the
zoo? They have buffalo. They have goats. They have llamas. You said capybara. They do. Yeah. They have ostriches. Yeah. No, it's crazy. They have all kinds of things. Anyway, the point is, they have all kinds of things, and it's pretty interesting to go there. And because I live nearby, it made a great place to take girls for dates, right? Yeah. But dude, that place was a staple in my childhood growing up.
Again, I asked you this earlier. Would you want to raise a family in Hamilton? Property taxes are going up a crazy amount. What are we getting for this crazy amount increase? We're not getting nothing. Oh, we're paying more wages to city workers, and everything's more expensive. That's why our property taxes are going up. Could you imagine that if we had public infrastructure like a zoo in Gage Park?
No, it becomes more expensive. And that's the thing is that when I grew up in Toronto...
No, but at least we're getting something.
Listen, the property taxes going up are not bad as long as we can see results and we can see changes. And that's what it all boils down to. What it boils down to is that when you see the city raising taxes because they're trying to do something positive, as long as you're not the type of person that feels like your city leaders are just stealing from you, then yes. I talk about Singapore sometimes because over there, leaders of the country can be fired. And that's the difference between the way everything operates in Canada versus
you have a term.
A lot of other countries. Yeah, you have a term and then you just write it up. And there are ways to be removed.
Yeah, sleep with your secretary.
Yeah, okay, sleep with your secretary and then
not make a bad financial decision.
But over there, if you're running the country poorly and making bad financial decisions, you can and will be removed from power. Right?
We need this.
The fact that Hamilton is raising taxes, and if they spend the money intelligently, that'll be good, and nobody will complain. If you look at content that's being released about people who live in other countries, I think Sweden, they were talking about the property taxes over there, and they're saying, yeah, they don't mind. It's like, why don't they mind that taxes are so high? It's because things work. Yeah. Infrastructure works. Bus system works. Transit overall. Healthcare. You name it, everything works. The streets are clean. Here, we have an array of problems, and property taxes are going up, and we have nothing but promises. I can't wait to see them do it. When I look at Toronto and the amenities that they offered, at least in the neighborhood that I grew up in, the neighborhood that I grew up in was technically nice. My family always lived in the crappiest house in the best neighborhood. We were those guys, and it didn't always feel like people liked us living in those properties because, as if though we were at fault for this. But the point there is that at the time, things were more affordable. Things were cheaper. We have a lot more people now. Toronto, the neighborhood that I grew up in, I don't know if I want to live there today. It's just so crowded. Honestly, the Hyde Park has the cherry blossoms every year. When I was growing up, I'd go there and there was hardly anyone. Somebody posted things on Instagram and now you cannot park anything. People park everywhere and are happy to get parking tickets because it's worth the photos they get. You're going to get a parking ticket, $60 or $80. A lot of people are just like, yeah, that's good for parking for the day.
Yeah.
Right? So
those Toronto fees,
Exactly, right? And Toronto parking tickets are crazy. It's like a game. If you want to socialize and you want to talk to people about stuff, what do you talk about? Rent, politics, traffic, and parking tickets. Hey, do you pay for parking or do you rather pay the parking ticket? What do you do? By the way, I pay parking tickets.
I pay parking.
There you go. Well, in Hamilton, but in Toronto, I don't often pay for parking. And that's not because of anything else. Just for context on that, I don't often pay for parking because
the chances of you getting a ticket is worse.
In areas that I know, right? And the other annoying thing is that in Toronto, you can't park in a residential neighborhood past midnight, which is annoying because if you're hanging out with your friends,
you got to park in a driveway or something?
Yeah, you got to park in a driveway or you got to move your car to a main street and park on the main street. It's annoying.
I guess that's good to get rid of friends that you're tired and want to go to bed and you're like,
yeah,
oh, you got to move your car, man. It's midnight.
I never saw it like that. I'm just like, man, this was just getting good.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. They encourage people to take the TTC.
It won't be much longer until we see, we're going to see the shadow of everything that happens in Toronto now happen in Hamilton. That's why I'm asking all these questions because I'm just getting ahead of what's about to happen.
Okay.
Should I increase the size of my driveway? Because in a couple of years, there won't be any parking on my street anymore past midnight.
100%. And I think they're making that part of the requirement now, especially even how they want to make electric cars mandatory for everyone, right? And they want to make it so that they won't be selling anything that's not an electric vehicle after 2030, 2035, somewhere in that range, right? Which is crazy because now if you want to apply for permits to widen your driveway, in Toronto at least, I think they make you install electric chargers as part of the infrastructure in order to be getting some kind of a driveway permit.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? And the thing is that honestly, it's not like they are upgrading their power grid enough. And they're going to have all kinds of challenges.
It's definitely a good thing. I think there's a lot of people that drive short distances where a car makes sense. And there's people that drive long distance and gas makes sense.
Yep.
Hamilton, we're building Tesla is getting the biggest service center and dealership in all of Ontario. It's going to be at Leverage Mall.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be at Leverage Mall.
That's actually an affordable option for them because having it at Yorkdale is mad expensive and unnecessary.
Yeah.
But Leverage Mall, that would be great because it'll actually bring in traffic for Hamilton from neighboring areas and it's affordable. See, actually, and that's the thing is that I believe if you're investing anywhere, you should follow the money. And the reason why in the States we've been considering Texas is because we are looking at where the money is going. Tesla moved to Texas. If I see a dealership for Tesla opening up at Leverage Mall, I didn't know that. That's positive.
But then what you said, widening the driveway, you need the electric car charger for the city of Toronto to widen your driveway. What I hear now is that we're building a Tesla dealership in Leverage Mall, right where the Bay used to be. But we tried for a long time building an arena at Leverage Mall, a little hockey arena for our OHL team. It's a great spot. Right on the link, instead of Coliseum downtown. Great spot. Spot. But it was always turned away. Always no. Right? But then Tesla, all of a sudden, yes, let's revamp the Bay and get rid of, the Bay closed. So let's use all the space and, we're going to open up Tesla there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy when you say follow the money. We're going to say no to, public ideas of putting an arena there. Well, when Tesla jumps on board, it's like...
Well, yeah, again, one is private industry. The other one is the city forking out money, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little bit different. That one's tricky. I'm not even sure how to address that. I don't know what that was going to do.
Do you think that when the city makes these plans to put in the dealership in Limeridge Mall, what you said, now, should we be investing around Limeridge? Because there's not many huge apartment buildings. There's old apartment buildings on the mountain that were built in the 80s. There's not many new apartment buildings. There's nothing like downtown.
In any city in Ontario, what are the top 5 areas in some kind of order that you would invest near? What are the 5 types of areas? Let's use an example where for me, one of the top 5 things that I would invest near if I was buying a property is water. So anything close to the water is probably going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Okay. Subway or good transit infrastructure. Yeah. Subway a lot more than, let's say, buses, right? Buses is good. Subway, if you're on a main line in Toronto, that's amazing, right? Yeah. Your property value is good.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the next thing? Being near a mall is pretty good.
Yeah.
For some, it's deterrent because they don't want to be near that kind of traffic.
Yeah.
Highway access is obviously
400
good.
Sears Highway.
Exactly. Yeah. And then what's another one? Like
Yeah, schools.
Yeah, schools. But I think that's more general. But in terms of big things, water's a big thing. Parks are a big thing, like big parks anyway.
Yeah.
Highway access within proximity to plazas is pretty good, right? Because
amenities.
Yeah, amenities, general amenities, right? So I think if somebody's going to invest near Lime Ridge, as long as you're within reasonable proximity, I think you're pretty good. If you ask me whether or not people should invest to be right across from Lime Ridge on the main street, I don't know. I wouldn't be too fond about that as a consumer.
But you look at Lime Ridge in a whole, where there's not many new apartment buildings, new condos. There's a lot of residential housing.
Yeah.
We have the link. You're halfway. 403's right there. QEW's this way. Great to get around.
Yeah.
Right. Toronto, Brantford, wherever, east, west, wherever you're going, and nobody's building up on Lime Ridge.
And that's the thing where you can see Hamilton kind of like a zip waiting to pop, right? Where it's got everything. Like, honestly, coming from Toronto, I actually look at Hamilton as being a mini Toronto. The reason why I look at that is even geographically, if you look at the way it's positioned, it's like, okay, in Toronto, the lake is south, in Hamilton, the lake is north, right? That stuff is reversed. But if you look at even the highway axis, you have Burlington Street or Tesla Boulevard going along the water, right? That is that is not too dissimilar to the Gardiner in Toronto. I would compare it, not in terms of like the way they have the city laid out, but I would compare it like that. And then you have, in Toronto, you have the 400, and then you have the DVP going north and south, and then you have the 401 going across. In Hamilton, you have the link going across, and then you have
403 and QW.
The 403. So you have Red Hills going
Red
north,
Hill and the link is same
and
road.
then 403. Yeah, Red Hill and it becomes the same thing. But yeah, it says Toronto to Red Hill, at least from Tesla Boulevard.
Yeah.
Right? So I think like it has the grid highway infrastructure to support growth.
Yeah.
Right? When Toronto built, and I wasn't around for this, I just heard about this, but when Toronto built the 400, when they built the DVP, and when they built all these highways, they said that this was overkill and that this infrastructure was not necessary and they would never need it.
That's the infrastructure we need now.
That's
when we build infrastructure. Who said that? What politician made that idea? Get his grandson.
They said it would be overkill, which is crazy. And now it's not enough. Hamilton infrastructure can still support more traffic, which is crazy, because it feels like infrastructure everywhere is overloaded, but Hamilton can support more. Like, the one thing I enjoy most about Hamilton, like, friends are just like, hey, where should we go? And they're just like, yeah, do you want to check out this place in Toronto? It's going to take us 45 minutes to get there from Toronto.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we get together and we decide to go, there's going to take us an hour. It's easier because in Hamilton, at least, the thing I like is that I can get anywhere I want to go within about 10, 15 minutes tops.
And if one street's backed up, then we have other options.
Tons.
Right? Main King's backed up, take Burlington Street.
The only thing I really don't like that they do consistently in Hamilton, and they do this the same in Toronto, is that when they're having some kind of a marathon, or they're doing the bike rides or whatever, they shut down some critical streets, and then you have no way of getting around them. So because you live in the east side, you maybe don't experience this as much as I do, but let's say if I'm in the north end,
they do it around the bay,
and they not only around the bay, they will do this thing on Cannon Street. If you want to get out, you can't get out, and they don't post signs about this thing that's happening. You have to figure out a way to drive all the way around the whole thing because you can't cut through. And that's kind of annoying. That often happens on Sundays. And so maybe I should start staying home more on Sundays. The reason why I moved to Hamilton is because I believe I can make impact, and I believe I can make waves in Hamilton, and impact on waves that will matter. When you are a solutions-oriented person, or you are a capable person in general, and I see capable, competent people moving to Hamilton all the time, and they can come here and make a difference. And it's nice to go to a place where you can change things and you can matter, versus being someplace where you're just another number. In terms of like, would you raise a family here? Erwin Zetto, he moved to, I think, Burlington, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember when he did move, I remember thinking that it was about the time when he started to have kids. And when he was having kids, they moved to Burlington.
Yeah.
He was Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah.
Right? Living in Hamilton, wearing the Ticats jersey, all that jazz. And that was great. But when it came to raising his kids here, did he want to raise his kids in Hamilton? That's a question you got to ask yourself. And I think he did, and he made a decision. Now, why did he make that decision?
So I grew up in Hamilton, so I'll tell you my side of it. I have friends that are from Burlington, that went to high school in Burlington. They don't have the same teachers that I had, being in the public school system, in the east end of Hamilton. Right? I know my teacher names. Cool stories that I just placed a tenant one of our places. I don't want to give too much information, but I was having trouble verifying this guy. Well, he told me where he worked. I knew the teachers where he worked. And I reached out to one of my old teachers. I haven't seen the teacher in 8-10 years. reached out. Hey, Skylar, how's it going? Good, man. I just want to verify this guy.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy that I go to the Tiger game and I always run into teachers. Right, I went to elementary school and high school with. My friends in Burlington never had that same connection. For whatever reason, I don't know why. When I asked that question, would you want to raise a family in Hamilton? That's because you're from Toronto and now you're in Hamilton. Now you're thinking about, is Hamilton not all it's cut out to be? Made enough money in Hamilton. Like, what's the decision to stay in Hamilton?
Yeah.
Right. For me, I'll never leave Hamilton. Love Hamilton. That's why I asked that question. So when you hear about people move to Burlington, I always say that I'll make enough money that I can move up the mountain. I'll never move up the mountain because it's definitely not my crowd up the mountain. But, these are, people live in Ancaster, right? Some people dream about living in Ancaster.
Interesting.
Like, why?
I personally not like it, but yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I think a lot of it is the bragging rights and the status that you get of having an address in Burlington.
The other day, I met one of my friends from Toronto. One of our other mutual friends was visiting, and he was with this girl, and she's a doctor. And she's just like, I'm just like, oh, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. And then it's just like, my friend Mark, he tells me, he's like, oh yeah, she's from Hamilton. And he's like, Stony Creek. And it's like,
yeah,
okay.
Get out of here, dude.
Get
out of here, dude.
No, I'm just like, okay. I'm just like, yeah, cool. And then she's just like, what about you? What part of Hamilton are you from? I was like, Hamilton. Right? Yeah. And then she's just like, oh, okay. And I'm just like, I know. I always find this interesting how Hamilton people need to distinguish where it is that they're from. Stony Creek. I'm on the mountain, right? And then so you have the mountain people.
Up the mountain.
up the mountain, right?
Not on the mountain, up the mountain.
Up the mountain, right?
Yeah,
okay, it's very different, right? I'm just like, no. I'm from the hood, right? Yeah. And I was just like, and all my friends are just like, you grew up in Hyde Park, shut up, man.
I can walk to the jail.
Yeah, exactly, right? It was within proximity, man. And it's one of those things where it's an interesting cultural thing about the city and people want to distinguish. And honestly, having been here for a while, I understand. Right. And I understand why some people wouldn't necessarily, depending on where they come from, wouldn't necessarily want to raise children in Hamilton, wouldn't want to necessarily associate with a lot of it because it really does feel to a lot of people like Hamilton, the leaders of Hamilton don't represent what they're fighting for.
We keep on going back to the big decision that they made about the train, spending $1 billion on this train. And then we have people that don't want to raise a family in Hamilton. I want to say they're from Stony Creek.
Yeah.
Why don't we spend that money on a city, on public stuff like the zoo?
Yeah.
Right? Simple things that makes you want to raise a family here.
Yeah.
I don't know how many votes that gets.
Dude, my brother's kids went to a school in Hamilton for a while, and I remember he was just like, yeah, there's a lot of support for the kids. There's a lot of amenities. There's a lot of things there in place to help the kids. And the thing was that the truth is a lot of families weren't taking advantage of a lot of the assistances that were available to the kids. It felt to them like it was for other people's lack of trying to take advantage of facilities. Like we're talking about after school programs, we're talking about scholarships, we're talking about like you name it. And my brother's kids were top of the class, on top of the line of everything, pretty much. Like they're amazing kids. But recently, some of them went to Westdale. And my brother says that the connections and the people that they're meeting as a result of going to Westdale are considerably more impactful than maybe some of the resources that are available when people go to schools with government programs. If you think about it, think about people who go to certain universities like Harvard, Princeton, you name it, MIT. Like you kind of wonder, is it that the education is better there, or is it that the people that they meet are of a certain demographic that provide an array of opportunities? You're
not going there to meet people, right? You're going there to get the diploma from the Ivy League school. Going to Westdale, you're going to remember your high school experience because you're meeting people that are just like your brother's kids, right? They grew up in this, they cut from the same cloth. The teachers that teach there probably cut from the same cloth. That's where you want to send your kids. I don't know if you're talking about when you say about all these other programs with scholarships and all this stuff, like what type of school that is, if that's just another public school or that's some sort of private school. But that would be the difference between, going to something like Westdale, right? I went to Delta, so Westdale's, is the Delta of the West, I guess, right? One of the oldest schools in Hamilton. And that's what you get, right? Look at all the famous people from Westdale.
Yeah.
Right? Eugene Levy, Martin Short go to Westdale, the art scene in Westdale, right? All these guys are performers. So yeah, like that's where you want to go to school. What does Burlington have?
But now that I think about it, I don't think there was any notoriety like that at the school that I went to in Toronto. So maybe it's just diluted. They have a saying for, let's say, artists, and with respect to cities in Ontario, and they'll say like you if you're an artist in Toronto, you go to Montreal to become somebody, and when you are somebody, you go back to Toronto.
The hell does that mean?
That means that you won't necessarily grow or reach your fruition.
Because you didn't leave home.
Not only because you didn't leave home, but because you're going to get choked in Toronto. You can't necessarily
find out who you are. It's like going to university in your hometown.
You won't even be seen.
I see.
That's the problem, is that Toronto is so freaking crowded and you try to raise your head above water and you drown. Montreal,
there's one Drake. There's not 10 Drakes.
Exactly, right? But that's the thing is that they say that you have to go to another place. And I think in terms of like wealth and real estate, that is the path that I think some people are pursuing with respect to Hamilton. You go to Hamilton to build your infrastructure. I mean, look at what we've done here. We have a property manager managing 800 units, roughly. And we have a house flipping business. We have investor groups. We have infrastructure. We have maintenance teams. We have resources. We can take these resources and make a killing in Toronto and definitely blow a lot of people who don't have the resources we do out of the water. I'm not saying that condescendingly. I'm just saying that as in the point where I wouldn't be able to do this should I have stayed in Toronto.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now I can go to Toronto and do stuff should I want to.